Good evening, Rotarians and guests. My name is Sana Malik and I am your MC for tonight's meeting of Rotary Melbourne. We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and also pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians that are present with us today. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to our 36th meeting and first in-person monthly meeting of the year. We are so pleased you could all make it. And it's my honour to welcome tonight's guest speaker, Sandy Hood, soldier, expedition leader and businessman. Sandy will be more fully introduced shortly by our chair of the day, George Diamandakis. In the meantime, please help me to join in making them both feel very welcome. Just a reminder, our club evening meetings this year are led by our team of members, most of whom are here tonight. You would have all spoken to them. They would have worked their charm around the room, I'm sure. We plan to have an evening meeting every second Wednesday of the month, and mid-New Year we hope to have it in the hybrid format, so it will be in person as well as on Zoom. We welcome suggestions of suitable guest speakers for the program. And now I'll pass the meeting to Chair of the Day, George Diamandakis, to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Sana. I have the pleasure of introducing Sandy, and I must confess something first up, and that is that Sandy and I have known each other for how many years, do you think?
Over 40 years.
Yeah, there you go. So we spent a great deal of time rowing together. Sandy sat in front of me, so I had to follow everything that he was doing, and it certainly sets the tone for his talk. I do want to sum up Sandy with a story that I would like to share with you, and it is a rowing story. So back in the day, we both rowed for Caulfield Grammar, and there was a race in the Maribyrnong. We rowed all the way there, and then we had to row up to the start. As we're rowing up to the start, I hear a little pop. I look down and there's a hole in the boat. We started sinking. We'd run over a submerged car seat in the Maribyrnong. So I turned to Sandy and said, "Mate, we need to get out." He goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "We're sinking." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Look down," and there's water rushing in the boat. So Sandy turns around and says, "Abandoned ship." So as all the other rowers are behind me, they're all thinking, what the hell's going on? And they see the water rushing up. Everyone has to get out of the boat. So let me tell you, the Maribyrnong is very, very filthy, or was. So we're standing in the water holding this rowing boat up with oars still in, and the starter says, "Caulfield, are you in this race?" Sandy, "What do you think, you idiot?" And then, that race went on. Sandy says, "Well, we've got to get some help because we've got to get the boat out." So he swims across the Maribyrnong, goes and gets help, come back, and we finally got the boat out, got the oars out and got the boat out and so forth. And I guess that, for me, showed leadership and courage in what was, at that time, a fairly stressful setting, because you're about to go into a race and you've lost your boat, and that boat was something that you train in, and then you have to adjust to a different boat, which is quite challenging. Sandy took the initiative, he set the scene, and he got everybody in order, and that is something that carried through in his life, and I'm sure he'll be able to talk through that and highlight some of those things. So it's with great pleasure that I hand the mic over to Sandy, who will talk about the rhythm of life. Sandy, over to you.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, honoured guests, thank you all so much for inviting me to speak to you this afternoon or early this evening. I've called this particular conversation I'm going to have with you because I'd like everybody to be involved in it. I've called it the rhythm of life, and there's a very good reason for this. What you people may or may not realise is that rhythm is absolutely everywhere. And so what I would like now is everybody please to put their hand on their chest, and you will feel your heart beating. Or in my case, the whole purpose of this is to make you realise and understand that no matter where you go and what you do, rhythm, irrespective of how you judge it, how you see it, how you use it, is with you everywhere. For example, you're in your car, you're turning right, you turn on the indicator. You're driving along in the car, you've got the radio on. There you can feel the rhythm, you can hear it. If it's not coming from the music, then it's coming from the tonal patterns of the person that you're listening to. And so, having said that, I want everybody to think about the rhythm that's in your life, how it affects you, how it changes you, the direction that it takes you, and how you will continue to use it to benefit you as you move forward on your journey. And my journey started at Caulfield Grammar School. Look at that handsome young lad there. Hey, look at the hair. I might also add that I just had a haircut the day before because it was considered too long for school rules. And I had it cut down there, and that in actual fact is called the lion look, in case you're interested. And I had that cut there, and that was very much me, and that was taken in my final year at school. Caulfield Grammar, many of you may be familiar with it, is one of Melbourne's oldest schools. It's been around since 1881 and has produced some amazing Australians. The interesting thing about Caulfield is it's an all-inclusive school, even though it is a Church of England grammar school. It is very inclusive and will take on anybody. So I've got Jewish friends, I've got Muslim friends, I've got all sorts of friends that I met at school who are still very, very close, and that was really typified by our 40th and 41st reunions that we had quite recently. And so you heard George talk about rowing, and who is that glamazon at the back there? Look at him. That's George. And that's me at the front. And there we are in the third eight, and we're rowing up on the Barwon, about to win our final on the Saturday. And both George and I can say with great pride that we never lost a race on a Saturday. The one thing that many of you may not know about me is that I am also a professional drummer. And I started young. And as you can see, that photograph there was taken in 1975, but I really started drumming when I was 5 years of age. And that was because Caulfield Grammar had their own drum corps, and I was absolutely enamoured of it. I could not believe just how fantastic that rhythm was, how it built you up, how it made you move forward, how it was one of those things that just got you right, boom, boom, in the heart. And for me, I've been playing the drums ever since, which, as part of my journey, in actual fact, has turned out to be rather special in so many different ways. So, Caulfield Grammar had a lot of different things to open up. It had cadets, it had its farming, outdoor education area at Yarra Junction, and it also had a lot of options and gave people a lot of opportunities. And for me, cadets was the absolute answer. I loved cadets, I loved everything that was associated with it. And so I decided, having been senior cadet officer of the Caulfield Grammar Cadet Unit, that I would apply to go to Duntroon. Now, the interesting thing about Duntroon is you have to have incredibly high academics, and my academics weren't particularly high. But I did do very well in all the other areas. However, when it came to the final pass, and this is a very important point, is that I missed out on that mark by 1 point. 1 point. And so in the ADF back in those days, what used to happen was that you would have to be 19 and a half before you could go to Officer Cadet Portsea. So I was 17. So my father thought, I've got a great idea. If you want to understand the people that you're going to join and command as you get further forward in life, then you better understand who they are. So I strongly suggest you go in as a private soldier, as a grunt, as a GE, General Enlistee. So that was a huge eye-opener, because the people I joined up with, many were men. These guys were like 26, 27. Many of them had very, very bad criminal records. Some of them were there because they were told, if you don't join the army, you are going to jail. These guys, some were illiterate. Some just did not have two words. Their dental work was appalling. But the army in those days was the victim of what was called the I'm a Soldier campaign. It was a huge build-up that was devised by the federal government under Malcolm Fraser to get people to rejoin the army, because we'd been run down so badly post-Vietnam War and the Labor government of Gough Whitlam. And so the whole idea was to get as many young diggers in as they possibly could. And these guys were rough and ready, but extremely determined. And I must also admit that even though they came from totally different socioeconomic background than I did, some of these guys are still some of my closest friends. I'm the godfather to some of their children, and yeah, it is an honour to have served with them, particularly in some of the situations we wound up in. This gets back to what I was talking about before with rhythm and training. Everything you do in the army is done to a certain rhythm. Every move you make, every turn you take, every single thing that you do is all done to either a 30 centimetre pace at 108 beats per minute, or to the regimental timing of wah, 2, 3, wah, Whether you're doing a left turn or a right turn, whether you're learning to drive a truck, fly a helicopter, jump out of an aeroplane, all these things are done to a rhythm. The one thing I really want to talk about is joining the Army and then having gone through all that, that's 1RTB Kapuka there, and that's basic training. What I really wanted to do was talk about, whilst we were there, the evolution going through the ADF. So the whole idea was to modernise, but we were putting up with some very old equipment, and we were also having to do with stuff that in actual fact would be described as just past World War II gear. Our compasses were old, our so much was old and rusty, it was just unbelievable. But as that usual digger sort of make do with what you've got attitude, we managed to do what we did. And so I decided to join the Parachute Battalion of the Australian Army, which was in those days just developing, 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, and wound up doing the long-range recon course and winding up in what's called long-range recon in the Pathfinder role. And that was an amazing sensation. And here we see one of our slogans on the left, courage is being scared to death and settling up anyway. Now that is an absolute truth, because people often talk about parachuting and they say, well, your first jump must have been absolutely frightening. Well, you know what? My first jump wasn't absolutely frightening, and there's a reason. And the reason is because you don't know what's happening. You've never done it before. It's the first time you've ever done it. So you hook on, you do your drill, and you're out the back door of that C7 Caribou, and then believe me, you know you're alive. And you hit the ground very, very fast and very, very hard, because you're only jumping from 700 feet. And this is important, because the next thing they say, well, when was the scariest jump? And it's your second, because you know exactly what's happening. And to talk about rhythm and talking about getting out of an aircraft, when you're fully qualified, you are jumping with at times up to 70 kilos of equipment strapped to your front. And that's where it sits, strapped to your front as you exit the aircraft. And there's a thing called a parachute shuffle. Once again, it's a rhythm. You're sitting there and you go, right, 1, right, 2, right, and as you go out the door, you'll let your safety strap go, and then you're out the door, all right? But the problem is, if you're carrying 67 or 60, and more platoon used to carry up to 80 kilos strapped to their front, you want to get out that door as fast as you can. You don't care. If there's that red light for a stop drop, you'll do anything to get past that jump master to get out that door. And there's a reason for it. Because before you deploy, your aircraft is flying at tack height. All right? And it's not like you think it's all glamorous and you're all sitting there and we're all men's together. It's awful. It is appalling. People are throwing up. There's vomit on the floor. People are slipping on the vomit, all this sort of stuff. And then when the aircraft goes from 50 feet, because it's 50 feet above treetop height, it then goes up to deploy at 700 feet in a very short space. And in that period of time, you're hooked on, you're standing there, you've got your gear, and all of a sudden, you get 6 Gs on your knees, and have a guess what happens? Everybody starts screaming. And I mean screaming, because the weight is appalling, as it just crushes you like this. And so when that door slides open, you want out as fast as you possibly can. And then you go from this cacophony of noise, where it's just people screaming and yelling, and you're out, and it's dead silence. You can't hear a thing. Deadly quiet. All you can hear is the wind blowing in, your risers as you're standing there, you're locked in, you're ready to go. And jumping at night is quite funny as well, because normally when you jump at night, you can't see a thing. You can't see your hand in front of you, it's so dark. And so we have an expression when you're coming into land, lock it in tight and take it as it comes, because you have no idea. The only way that you know is when you've dropped your suspension hooks, which is all that gear that I was talking about is strapped to, and it has a 15-metre suspension rope below, which starts to pendulum. And then when it hits the deck, you know you've got 2 seconds before you land. And there are a lot of funny stories about guys who didn't actually hit the ground when they landed. They wound up in trees, and I'll tell you 2 of them. One of them was a guy who was standing there, and the role is if you're stuck up 50, 60 foot in a tree, the idea is to pull the parachute, your reserve, which is strapped to your front, climb down your reserve, and then do your drills and then grab your weapons and all the way and go out. Well, a mate of mine, he was up there. He pulled his parachute. He was miles away, so we thought, oh, it's fine. So he climbs down, but he wound up climbing into his parachute. So he's in there and he's going, trying to get out. So he got his combat knife and went, stepped out, and then kept going and grabbed his gear. But the funniest one was a friend of mine he was like way, way, way up in one of these huge, huge trees up in the Northern Territory. And he's up there, and the drill is if you're so high up and you can't see, you get your combat knife out, you drop it, and you wait to hear how far away you are from the ground. So he's up there and he's going, oh man, okay. He drops the knife. He didn't hear a thing. He's like, oh, man, I must be so far up. This is ridiculous. All right, I'll wait till dawn. I'll stand there and I'll just lock him tight and I'll just wait. Anyway, morning comes and the sun's coming over the horizon and he looks around. He thinks, oh, so I've got to be able to get down. He looks down. He's that far from the ground. The knife had dropped into some bushes and he had no noise there. So, once those sort of things, the interesting thing about, if you can have a look at this photograph that I'm about to shoot here, you'll see it. That's what a deployment looks like when you've got 150, 200 people in the air, and you can multiply that by 6 or 7 aircraft, and then you've got a full battalion in the sky. So you can't steer. Those are round parachutes, and they're not steerables. It's not like when you see these skydivers who jump out and they're doing tricks and stuff. You can't steer your parachute. All you can do is pull down on your risers and do your best you possibly can so that you don't crash into each other. And that happens, believe me. Or you'll see those suspensions, those guys haven't popped their suspensions yet, but sometimes what happens is they'll pendulum through and wrap around another parachute. So you've got 2 guys coming down under one chute. Don't worry, they're designed to do that. So as you can imagine, it is an interesting thing. And the other interesting thing about playing all that and doing that sort of, sometimes things go wrong. Because as I was explaining before, when you've got a full battalion in the sky, you've got also all the supporting arms that go with it. So you've got the artillery, you've got the transport vehicles, all that sort of stuff. That all gets parachuted in. But sometimes things go wrong. Now that is a FFR Land Rover that when it came down, it actually hit a tree, snapped the tree in half and broke the back. And I felt really, really sorry for the SIGs whose vehicle that was, because they had all their jack rations. That's the extra rations that you put in so you don't have to, that one very dead Land Rover. So things did go wrong. And sadly, we also did lose some of our paratroopers on the way through training accidents and things went wrong. Chutes didn't deploy properly, or there were incidences where people crashed into each other and risers collapsed and both guys came down together and they did not survive. But 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment had the highest safety record of any airborne unit in the world at the time that they had the parachute roll. So it was something that we're very, very proud of. So during the time that we were there and I got posted out, we saw service in Southeast Asia. Some members of the platoon got attached to 2nd Battalion Royal Malay Regiment and did operational observations on the Malay-Thai border, doing anti-drug and anti-terrorist activities, most of which, sadly, is not recognised by the Australian government. These guys do not get a pension, do not get any medals or any recognition whatsoever, which is a very sad thing because a lot of those guys did do some fairly brave things that will never, ever be recognised. After getting out, I did, from start to finish, 8 years, I then went and started what's called contracting. Now, contracting is different from being a mercenary. Being a mercenary is where you go and fight for somebody because they're paying you a shed load of money and you don't have any moral qualms about what you're doing, you just go and do your job. Military contracting is different. It's where you are transferring the knowledge that you have to local or Indigenous troops, all right, to get them to be the best soldiers they can possibly be so that when it gets into a situation, they can act and work particularly well. And we were very lucky and very successful with those operations that we did. I'm very proud of the fact that I took part in that. And it also made sure that transition in South Africa, all right, was nowhere near as horrendous as it could have been because a lot of those people who were absolute left-wing radicals who would have made even the most strange situations come to reality, were actually neutralised and enabled a peaceful and serene transition for South Africa from white to black rule. So the roles that we did there was infantry minor tactics, ambushing, hit and run, shoot and scoot, all that sort of stuff. And the whole idea was to try and disrupt as much as we possibly could the plans of those people who were trying to make life difficult for the transitional forces. Once doing that, I decided to take another contract and I moved to London where I was doing personal security for a rock band called Bros. Now, not everybody will know who they were. They were these 2 Irish twins and their sidekick who, in actual fact, were very, very successful in the late 80s. And I wound up getting attached to them and they were lovely guys. But the problem is that Luke, who's the guy on the left, who was supposed to be the drummer, couldn't really play the drums. So here we go. Yes, that's right. Here's your favourite boy. Yes, I can play the drums. And not only that, I can teach you how to play them much better than what you are. So then I got transitioned across to their crew, and then wound up doing a lot of session work, particularly for groups like The Cure, Echo and the Bunnymen, The Cult, and Love and Rockets. So that was an amazing time, and I got to meet a lot of famous people and did a lot of dancing on top of the pops, which is BBC's equivalent of Countdown. So that was a very interesting time. And then we get to what I call a particularly dark period of time. It was a situation that if I look in hindsight, would say I probably wouldn't do again. But for those of you who don't know what this is the 7.62 L1A1 self-loading rifle. This is the main military rifle of the Australian Army right up until 1988, when it was replaced by the FA-88. This is based on the Belgian FN self-loading rifle. It fires around the 7.62 rimless NATO cartridge, which travels at 823 metres per second, and when it hits a target, it hits it at 6.5 tonne pressure square inch, per square inch pressure. So when you get hit by one of those things, they didn't call it an elephant gun for no reason. It really made a mess of its target. Interestingly enough, I was contracted to a company called Médecins Sans Frontières. Many of you have probably heard of them, a very, very professional and well-organised group of volunteer doctors who go to world hotspots where no one else will go, and they are responsible for looking after the local population who, in this particular case, didn't have much of a chance. So, at 11 a.m. on March the 16th, 1988, I was a place in northern Iraq. We'd set up the field hospital, and it was there that Saddam Hussein decided to use his weapons of mass destruction and terror on the local indigenous Kurdish population. Now, Halabja, you may have heard about it if you want to look it up and Google it and learn about the place itself. It was a town of probably around about the size of Wagga, and what had happened is that during the Iran-Iraq War, which finished in 1988, what happened was that the Peshmerga, who are the Kurdish freedom fighters, they took control of the town from the Republican National Guard. You've all heard about the Republican National Guard. That was Saddam Hussein's elite, and they were the ones responsible for all the raping, pillaging, and just the horrendous work. You're not going to believe just how bad that stuff was that they did. So they dropped sarin gas, they dropped mustard gas, they dropped a whole lot of other chemical weapons onto civilians after they'd gone and bombed the place back to the Stone Age. Now, many of you probably don't know much about the Kurds, but they all get married very, very young. Girls, because they're Muslims, get married at the oldest they can be to get married. Normally it's about 15 or 16, and they have children at a very young age as well. And the thing about the Kurds is the way they swaddle their children very, very close to them, right up until they're a certain age. Now, the problem was that this was a market day, so there were thousands of people everywhere just waiting to get on with their daily job when all these American-supplied aircraft, F-14s and F-4 Phantoms, came through and dropped all this various ordnance. Alrighty. Within 24 hours, there were 5,000 dead Kurds and 7,000 injured, and to this day, the effects are still ongoing. But the problem was that once the town had been cleared, Saddam wanted to find out just how effective his chemical attack had been, and so sent in his nuclear biological chemical assessors, and they went around. Now, what the young girls did was they realised that there was gas in the air, so they dove into gutters and threw their children underneath them and dived over the top of them with the hope of saving them. This was not successful because either the gas got to them before they were covered, or jumping on top of them asphyxiated them. And they died. The worst part was the Republican Guard thought it would be a great joke to booby-trap the bodies. And so myself and my fellow team members are going out and trying to clear these bodies and get them out of the gutters and get the place, because there would be a huge risk of disease coming through afterwards. But unfortunately, they booby-trapped the bodies. And so a couple of my guys who had gone forward to roll the bodies over to put them on stretchers, it detonated, and it not only destroyed what was left of the body, but also destroyed them. So unfortunately, I had to come up with a method to stop this from happening. I couldn't risk the lives of my troops, and the other thing was that I didn't want to damage the the integrity of the body itself, and I didn't want them to, all their family members have to pick up bits and pieces of them. So what I did was I went round to all the various butcher shops that I could. I went down to the workshops and I got a whole lot of butcher's hooks, and we made 3-pointed grabs. And what we did was that we would tie a 25-metre rope, and then we'd do the old lasso, hook it on to the body, roll the body back over, all right? And then if there was an IED there, it would go off, and of course that would make sure that we didn't affect our own people. And that happened a lot. To this day, there are in excess, they believe, of 30,000 people who are still suffering from the effects of what happened. And for me personally, it created huge issues. And they didn't start showing until much, much later. Because when you're young and you feel that you've got the emphasis to be able to go forward and continue on, you tend to lock that stuff deep down inside, and that's exactly what I did. My next gig was at Unifil. Now, you would have thought that I had enough of that, but the pay was great, and working for the United Nations Intervention Force in Lebanon was a task not really worth doing because there was no peace to be kept. I don't know if you know much about the history of Lebanon, but during the Civil War there were 16 different sects of people, from Maronite Christians to Druze militia to Shiite, Sunni, PLO, Hamas. All these different groups believed that they should be in charge of Palestine. But I do have a slightly humorous story that goes with this. We were on an observation point above the southern regions of Lebanon, which was controlled by the South Lebanon Christian militia, and they were backed by the Israelis. So what they decided to do was, we had a building that was enormous, had a big UN on the side, so that they knew we were there, and my little Pakistani peacekeepers had all dug their slit trenches and everything around there to create an area of protection, and we just sat there and observed. That was our job. We were there to observe and make sure that nobody breached the accord, because every time the accord breached, everyone started shooting each other. And you'd have entire suburbs would just light up, all this red tracer would go out one way, and then all this green tracer would come back the other way. And that used to go on until somebody would stop. Anyway, there are 2 stories, and I know I'm running out of time. I don't want to bore you guys, but I'll quickly tell the one that I think best really just gives a full indication of what that whole Lebanese situation was like. So we were based in Beirut, and we got a call from the Northern Maronite Christians that one of their children had been hit with a round in their head. So the Kazovac helicopter was flown up. We flew up there with the paramedics, and the whole idea was, of course, to get this little kid treated as fast as we possibly can and get it back without breaching the accord. So we get up there, we have UH-1H helicopter. They run out, they grab the body with the mother. The girl's alive, bleeding profusely, but they managed to get her under control. They put her on the helicopter. We get the word from Beirut, from headquarters, no, you can't put her on the helicopter. It's going to breach the accord. Now, you've probably heard about a thing called the Green Line. The Green Line used to separate the country entirely, but each part of that Green Line was controlled by a different section of military militias. It was unbelievable. So I had a 6'4" Canadian attachment from the 2nd Battalion, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, who said to me, "Boss, we're not taking this." So they grabbed the girl, put her in the back of the Land Rover with her mother. We had 2 support crew, and we started driving down the Green Line. Now, every time you're driving down, every time you have to stop and negotiate to get through the various checkpoints. So after a lot of negotiating, frustration, getting through, we finally just got short of our position. And these guys wouldn't let us through. There was a firefight going on, and they didn't want us to come through and get cut up. So anyway, we waited, and in the end, Brian said, "I've had enough of this." He put on his blue helmet, he dragged me over to the driver's seat, he came out, stood in front of the Land Rover, and was standing there screaming at these guys, "Bas, bas, halas," which means stop in Arabic. And everybody just put down their weapon. Who is this madman? Anyway, it was about 150 metres, and all the way down there, we crawled, stop, do not shoot. Anyhow, we got through. We finally got through the front gates of the Port District, got down there, and I couldn't believe it. These people just came from everywhere. There were doctors, there were lavender stretchers, you name it. They were all running towards it. Anyway, this young Pakistani doctor comes in, sticks his finger in the girl's neck and goes, "Don't worry about it, she's dead." So we went through all that for nothing. And it was not long after that that I decided I just did not want to do this sort of work anymore. This is appalling, and it does have a terrible, terrible effect on you. So then I decided to get involved in life on the Nile. And I joined an adventure travel company called Trans Global, and it was an absolutely fantastic lifestyle. It was the absolute antithesis of everything that I was doing before. I was taking people around, we were visiting all the various antiquities. It was a fabulous, fabulous job. And not only that, but I worked in Egypt, Israel, Jordan. I took specialist tours through Turkey and Gallipoli. We did religious tours, and afterwards, if you're interested, I'll tell you some funny stories about that. And I also wound up in Syria, Israel and Jordan, India, Nepal, Pakistan. And with that, I got very, very sick. I wound up with a severe case of hepatitis A, and my eyes were daffodil yellow. And I was this jaundiced colour. And my area op said to me, listen, I think you've got hep, we're going to fly you back to London. So I went back to London. They sent me down Harley Street to see one of the UK's highest hematologists, and he looked at my paperwork, and it was one of those guys that you just thought wouldn't exist but really did. Anyway, he had a button-up bow tie and this big, chubby, fat cheeks, and oh, very good, Marvy, oh, lovely, oh, yes. Anyway, he's looking through my paperwork, he's going, oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes, tell me, Mr. Hood, do you drink alcohol? And I went, yeah, I do, I drink it moderately. He goes, well, here's an idea. You can either stop drinking, or you can die. What do you think about that? And I went, I think I'll stop drinking. So I haven't partaken of any serious consumption of alcohol since then. So it's interesting to know, we were at a wedding quite recently, and people seriously thought that just because of my demeanour and how I am as a person, that I was off my face. So we're about to go, and this guy goes, mate, don't get in the car. Give us your car keys, please. I can't trust it. You said, no, I'm not, don't be irresponsible. And my wife just leaned over and said, he doesn't drink. It's me you have to worry about. So after doing that job for 7 years, and there's a myriad of fantastic stories I could tell you, but I don't want to bore you guys. The obvious question then is, having done all those sorts of wonderful activities, I also did overland treks from London to Kathmandu and London to Nepal, which were absolutely brilliant, and that was an absolutely brilliant part of that, and that's the old Orange. She and I, oh, that's the Doma, sorry, that's a boat that we used on the, and there's my overland truck there, the Unstoppable Orange we used to call her, because she would go anywhere. Oh, look at that handsome man there. God, he's like a stick. Anyhow, I lost a lot of weight when I was ill. Yeah, so that's one of the sort of trucks. That's an ex-army British Army truck, four-wheel drive, and we had a trailer on the back, and that used to take 15 people. And it was awful if you had 15 people, one of whom no one liked, and you had to spend the next 10 weeks with them. So, having finished that, there I am in Turkey. I put that there, that's a serene one, because that had some pretty nasty photos in it, which I didn't want you guys to see. And then, of course, we get into the rag trade. So how did I go from leading expeditions, doing all the work that I'd been doing before, and winding up in the fashion industry? Well, I'm a third-generation rag trader. My grandfather before me was a rag trader, my father was a rag trader, and so obviously when I came back, everyone thought, well, that would be the thing for him to do. But I had no intentions of doing that at all. I wanted to go back out and do. So I came home for Christmas, and I got to spend 2 weeks with my father, and then sadly he was killed in a motor car accident, and left no one at the helm of the company. So I had two older brothers, and they said, guess what you're doing? You got a lot of people. You've got 275 employees to look after. You've got a mother you're going to have to care for. Guess what? The road of adventure is over for you. And so I had to get myself wrapped around the fashion industry. So I put myself through the Melbourne College of Textile and Design, and from there continued on into the fashion industry. And now I run a fashion agency where we make, design and distribute clothes for other people. So we work with people like Henry Bucks, Myers, David Jones, a lot of menswear, upmarket boutiques, and we create and put together stories for them. So it is a rewarding but very, very difficult job at the moment. It is like unbelievably hard because, in fact, all our businesses in Melbourne were closed. The only thing that kept us going was the fact that we had our accounts in Hobart and New South Wales and also in West Australia who didn't actually close down at all, and they kept needing high-end tailoring, so that worked very well for us. And as I always say when I'm sort of talking to people, don't worry about it, darling, camouflage is the new black. Now, the other interesting thing is, that's a great, darling, it's just totally divine, what you were supposed to say, but because I'm a non-drinker, it's totally de-vinegar, darling. And as you can see, I've got the old designer facial hair and glasses, and it's all totally Marvy and very, very exciting. And I've even got my own Muppet that was made for me. Very good likelihood. I think that's very much me. I like it. All right, now my other passion, and I'll quickly finish on this one, is the Caulfield South Primary School Drum Corps. I thought that if I've got all this ability to be able to still drum and teach drums, that I should be able to instill that into these guys here. Now that's a small group, and there we were shooting a video with Silverchair. You can look that up on YouTube, it's still there. But we normally have around about 70 of them, and they all march on Anzac Day, and you can see them marching there and there. And basically what we do, it is a fully regimented drum corps, and they partake in the main Anzac Day parade in Melbourne. They march from St Paul's Cathedral to the Shrine twice, and they are a very, very important part of the group itself. So that's a uniform I designed for them, and you're probably wondering why that guy's there's got a green beret on, because he's a different designatory within the corps. So as you can see, the ADF love us, and this is exemplified by that soldier there giving us that young officer giving us a salute as we came past, which is something that ADF members don't normally do, but they really love what we do and how well we do it. So that is something that I've been doing for 25 years now, and basically it's a fantastic. Every Friday morning I get up at 4:30 and drive from where I live in Central Victoria down to Caulfield South Primary. We teach them for an hour, and then the rest is up to them. So if you've got time on Anzac Day, come down and have a look. You'll see them marching by, and give us a bit of a shout out. That's the Caulfield South Primary School Drum Corps. And most recently, I've been getting back in the studio. There I am in my drug dealer look, looking very succinct and stylish. But it's a lot of fun and I love doing it. So, yes. So basically, as you can see, rhythm has gone through my life from when I was a very young child to where I am today. The point that I made at the beginning of our conversation was, make sure that the rhythm that you are following is the one that's going to guide you in the direction that you want to go. It doesn't matter what time of life you're at. The rhythm is there to guide you, and it will get you there, irrespective of what your religious beliefs are, irrespective of what you yourself believe. If you have that faith, and you have that drive, and you have the physical want to be able to do what you really want to do, not what everybody else wants you to do, then you have the opportunity to do it. Some people say it's following your dream. I'd like to say, follow the beat, follow the rhythm, because the beat goes on. Thank you very much.
Just get a few questions.
Yeah. No problems at all.
Or if you just want to, we're going to have a few questions. If you can just stand up, mention your name and speak up, and we'll get it through. Sandy, I've got a couple for you.
Yep,
so
sure.
Are we seeing a Netflix series of you sued with your mad adventures?
I doubt that very much. I tend to play it down. I mean, I'm not the sort of person, look, when George asked me to do this, I sort of said to him, look, maybe it's not that exciting, maybe it's not that, interesting to people, but look, I'm sure there are plenty of other people with much, much better stories than I, and who've got a lot more action and stuff like that they would like to talk about. Anyway.
I'm sure our members are thrilled now with the lessons you've given us. Sandy, on an important matter, you've done some amazing things, different industries, different experiences. Is there one thing that's still bearing that you missed or you want to do still today or before that you want to share tonight?
Well, I'd really like to make a record and sold 1 million copies. That would be fabulous. No, look, to be perfectly honest, I've been to Everest. I haven't climbed to the top. I've been to Base Camp 10, which is the highest that you can get before you go to the top. But I'm not a mountaineer, and I just said, look, too many people get killed climbing Mount Everest. What's the point? And you don't necessarily have to be a great mountaineer to get there. All you've got to do is have a fitness level. And, American clients pay $125,000 to get to the top of Everest. They're guaranteed to get to the top, but there's no guarantee they're going to come back. So something like that. Look, I've had a really fulfilling life. I've got 2 gorgeous kids. I've been married for 25 years. I really think that I've So somebody said, you've lived about 12 different lifetimes. And I said, yes, but I've lived them to the fullest.
Amazing. I'll now open up to the floor. Who would like to... President Reg,
Yes,
please,
yes.
yes.
Sandy, first of all, thanks for a really entertaining, actually quite insightful presentation. Quite a lot of residents with things our club's very interested in. One of them is helping people with trauma. I was just interested in the impact on rhythm of that trauma.
Okay, good question. Thank you, and very insightful. All right, for me, although I wouldn't exactly say that I got depression, my rhythm slowed. It really slowed down. I got to the point where I found it hard to get out of bed. I was having terrible night's sleep. I was having horrendous dreams and flashbacks, and I just thought, what the hell is going on? So I consulted with a friend of mine who was a counsellor with the ADF, and he goes, "Oh, Woody, mate, you've got PTSD. You go and get yourself diagnosed." So I went off and I got a mental health plan, and there's a whole lot of strategies that I've got to put in place. There are things I can't do. I'm not allowed to go and see, and things I can't partake in. But in answer to your question, yeah, my rhythm slowed down. It took me quite a long while. But I did it without taking drugs. I was on zero medication, and I just did it through conversations with ex-veterans and just learnt to steer away from what we call triggers. So, yeah. Well, thank you.
Great question.
Yes, brother.
John, my name's Andy.
Yes, John.
Just hearing you talk about Northern Iraq, so when you talk about triggers there, so when you hear the stories of what's happening in Ukraine, is that the sort of thing you're talking about? Because
Yep.
when you were describing that situation in Northern Iraq, it sounds exactly what we're going to see.
That is exactly, and we already know it's going to happen because it happened in Syria. What will happen is that the Russian fighting machine will get to a point where they know they can't win. At the moment, it's a logistic nightmare for them already. They can't supply oil, fuel and weapons to their own troops. So what they've gone and done is they've pulled back out from the Kiev salient. They're coming around to the east, and they're going to try and hit up from there. Now, the Ukrainians are doing a hell of a job with what they've got, but the simple thing is you've only got to look at places like Alab and all those sort of places in Syria, where when all the Russian high-tech runs out, they just start using dumb bombs, and they don't care who they kill. All right, it's all about collateral damage and inflicting as much damage on the enemy as they possibly can. And that's my call. That's what will happen. And I just don't think that Mr. Putin thought that it would turn into what it has. I seriously thought that he would steamroll over these guys, but he just greatly underestimated their ability. And I think the West still has a duty. This is just my opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of any government department, but I think we still have a duty. This is it is sacrosanct to have your own country. If you look at the history of how it developed, Ukraine has always had its own identity. It was the Soviets who destroyed that identity, and basically that's where we are because of it. But yeah, that's exactly what I fear.
I think we've got time for just one more question. Anyone else? No? That'll do it.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Sandu.
so much.
Thank you. I will now get
Thank
the vote
you
of
all.
thanks from our MC, Sana. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. That was quite moving. Really, really enjoyed that. We would like to gift you, as a token of our appreciation, the limited edition R100 Centenary socks. They are 200% Australian made in Preston by past President Phil Endersby. He is from Wilderness Wear. So I have them here.
Thank you very, very much. And I will wear them with pride. Thank you.
I'm sure you'll have plenty of outfits to coordinate those socks with.
Yes.
So.
You're not wrong about that. Thank you so much.
I will now pass to President Reg for notices and closing.
Thanks very much, Sandy. And look, I just have a few words. It feels very formal with you guys sitting over there and me standing up here, but you'll hear my voice this way at least. The first thing I just wanted to point out to you is on the front desk there's some quite interesting handouts, which I recommend anyone interested take. There's certainly a flyer on our member match mentoring program. That's an experiment. We're just getting involved in 50 members for 50 mentees for international students. I also have in the room, we have in the room with us today Robert Fisher, who has some other, Robert, you might just like to wave your hand. Robert's an expert on a couple of other initiatives that we're taking in that mentoring area, and I encourage anyone who has a question to ask him if you're interested. The second thing I wanted to draw your attention to is a little flyer for a function we're holding on the 12th of May. It's going to be a prestige wine night with canapes and lots of good fellowship, good company, and 12th of May at 6:30 at the Crew establishment in Kew. So be there or be square is what we used to say anyway. Not very cool these days. Finally, we have a couple of distinguished international guests in the room today. There's probably a number of guests here, but who I'd like to say a general thank you to. But to our international guests, one of whom has a banner that he'd like to swap with her. That is Dato Dr. Sushtab, I think, who are you in a position to do a swap or no? I don't have the banner now. Ah, right. Sorry for that. Okay, I'll talk with you at the end of the meeting. Okay. Thank you. There might have been a misunderstanding there. He's from Malaysia and District 3310. Do you want to? 3310. Yeah. Good.
There's two in Malaysia. 330, 3300, and 3310. 3310 consists of Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei.
Fantastic.
3 countries.
It's a shame Suresh Markandan, one of our relatively recent members, couldn't be here to greet you. He comes from that part of the world. Thank you so much. And we also have multiple Paul Harris Fellow Award winner, and his name is V.S. Sudhakar from the Rotary Club of Coimbatore. I apologise for my pronunciation. I do know that that's quite near Bangalore, and he's here for a little while, and I think we'll be seeing you at a meeting next week, and we'll do a banner swap then. So welcome. Great you could be here tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much. A reminder that our monthly meeting will continue every second Wednesday, which I think has already been said, and next month we have our guest speaker on the 11th of May will be Claire Moore from Sweet Justice. That event's at least going to be recorded, possibly hybridised, and it promises to be a cracker because Claire was the winner of our first Environment Sustainability Award this year, and she's agreed to come back and tell us a bit more of her story, which, having been there, and you'll see a flyer for that event on the front desk as well, it's a pretty impressive story, and she's got a 10-year-old boy who's an absolute genius because he invented the business that sells about 1,000 eggs a week from 999 chickens. It's quite amazing. But they also run a honey enterprise that is providing fantastic opportunities for prisoners to develop some vocational talent. So that's really interesting. Next week's Rotary meeting, we've just announced yesterday that Dr. Peter Doherty will be making a return visit to our club. Back in March 2020, he got us a little bit ahead of the game with a brief of what this pandemic was going to be all about, and I have to say it was pretty interesting, and so interesting that several media outlets grabbed the soundtrack of that presentation and broadcast it straight after that meeting. So come along and see Peter. He's got some really interesting insights on the opportunities that have arisen for Australia as a result of the pandemic. He'll be coming in inbound on a large screen on Zoom, mainly because he's an 82-year-old man who's very nervous about socialising with people in the pandemic climate, and he'll be delivering that way, but it'll be a great event, and it's always a lot of fun at the Sofitel. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thanks especially to our guest speaker, Sandy. I've already made some comments when I asked a question, but I can't tell you how this resonated with us, because we've been focusing on trauma relief for people who've been through floods, bushfires, and dare I say probably a bit of pandemic as well. So it's been a trifecta of terrible stuff for the Australian community, and a lot of Rotary attention going to that. So right now I think it's my duty to say farewell to all, goodbye, have a great break, a great Easter everyone. I'm not quite sure whether there's, we're continuing to just have a bit more of a natter afterwards, but I'm sure we will. Thanks everyone for being here, and thanks again, Sandy. All the best everyone.